And that's why I told you not to play against her.
Greetings, children of the screen, your friendly neighborhood nerd scum here once again, and I am joined by...
Taylor.
And welcome to another edition of Carry That Weight, the Cowboy Bebop Retrospective, where we're going to be taking a look at Session 11, Toys in the Attic.
Okay, showtime.
I think it's time to blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Right on, guys. So Toys in the Attic is one of the weirder kind of standalone episodes, as this show doesn't really deal with like aliens or monsters or any of that kind of stuff. But in this episode, it is pretty much just a tribute to Alien, where we find the crew completely broke, out in the middle of nowhere, with very little money, no food, just totally like roughing it at the moment whenever something on the ship starts biting them and infecting them one by one, forcing Spike to do like a one-man Ripley on this creature, and it's just funny and awesome and pretty cool. But that's what I thought. Taylor, this was your first ever episode of Cowboy Bebop, isn't that right?
Yes.
Alright, and it's a weird one to be your first episode, but coming into this blind, what did you think?
I thought it was great. At first I was really confused as to what was happening, but then as I looked at it more, it started to make sense, and it's so great.
Yeah. The episode, almost all these episodes, except for a few, they really work as standalone, so that kind of their bottle episodes where it's like a villain of the week, where you can kind of just watch that episode and in it kind of get an idea of who the characters are and their functions on the ship and their personalities. And this one's weird because it's not a normal bounty, but I feel like it still does all those things pretty well. So despite this maybe not being the best episode to introduce you to the show, I feel like you still get a pretty good idea of the world of the show and the characters and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
All in all, though, you enjoyed the episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it's very different, but that's kind of what makes it awesome. Okay, ma'am. So, out of this episode, which we've already established that we both very much enjoyed, what was your favorite thing?
My favorite thing was Ed. Just Ed all around.
Of course. Of course. Is there anything, any specific moment or, any specific interaction that really, solidified that being your favorite thing about the episode?
Yes. When the happy face spun around and
Yes.
you just knew that it was Ed that did that
Yeah.
a while ago.
Yeah, that's Ed's, hacker logo, or, her mark. Yeah. And that's great because, again, you've never seen the show before, have no context clues, but in the way that they present it and how the tone of the graffiti itself, it has to come from Ed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's great. Again, I think that not only points to why you liked it, but also points to how well crafted the show is, that having never seen the show before, you can watch it and see that and be like, yeah, she did that.
Oh, yeah.
And again, yeah, that's fantastic. Ed's great in this episode. I love how much of the elements of her being a cat they implement in this episode. When we first see her, she's sleeping on the back of a couch, and then while everybody else is being really serious, she's just doing her own thing, and eventually gets bored, so she just takes a fucking nap. And that's about it, you know? And then there's this creepy thing on board, and as it comes near her, she just kind of grabs it and munches down.
Yeah.
She gives no shits, just like a cat.
Same.
Yeah. So no, yeah, that's a very good pick. Ed's great in all the episodes, but yeah, she's used very well in this one, especially because it's a very different episode than the normal ones.
Yeah.
She provides pretty much the levity that you need for this episode not to get kind of bogged down and boring as kind of an homage to Alien movies.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ed's great in this one. It's super fun. So as for me, my favorite thing in this episode is, frankly, it's just the reveal of where this thing came from and what it is, because it's such a stupid, ridiculous, and kind of gross idea. But you're going through this whole thing being oh crap, there's aliens in Cowboy Bebop, or like there's monsters in Cowboy Bebop now. Like this show's going to a whole nother place. And like, no, it's just a joke about like leaving crap in the fridge. And what's crazy is like they get so much mileage out of it and the joke still works. Like they still manage to make it gross and actually kind of like exciting and creepy in places. And at the end it doesn't take away like the joke that's the reveal of like they left a freaking lobster in this fridge for like a year and it created its own ecosystem and like either mutated or either this is a life form that came from that growth. Either way, like none of it's done so well, and even like the final sequence where they're pushing the fridge out and like you see the thing, like it's really beautiful and gross at the same time. And just like so many things in Cowboy Bebop, all these completely contradictory elements mesh together to make something that works so well that like even a slight misstep could have screwed it up, but they stick the landing. Like, yeah, and the joke plays. Like you're really invested in what's happening to the characters, but then the moment the joke happens, you're like, damn it!
Yes!
You dumbasses! And of course, like, it's one of those things, too, where, like, I think everyone has had the experience of forgetting about something in the fridge and at some point going back and being like, what the fuck is that? And then opening it up and immediately being like, that was a mistake. We just need to burn the whole fridge. Just get rid of it. Just burn the whole thing. It's not savable. And this is kind of like the perfect, like, extrapolated, like, sci-fi opera version of that. So yeah, that's my favorite thing. Is like this episode's full of great stuff, but as with most of the time in Cowboy Bebop, it's the subversion of everything that they're doing that really helps bring it all together, and that's such an interesting dynamic. And I just absolutely fucking love it. Fucking Cowboy Bebop, man.
Fuck yeah.
So that's the story. And what was the real lesson? Don't leave things in the fridge.
Right on. So we've established that we both enjoyed this episode. It's got a lot of cool stuff in it. But, Miss Taylor, what in this episode just didn't work for you? Or, like, what did you fucking hate? Or, you know, just like, what didn't work for you?
I kind of sort of disliked the point of view of the alien.
So like, the alien POV moving through the ship and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's fair. It's definitely stylistically different from everything else in the episode. I believe the reason they're doing that is for a couple of different reasons. Number one is, especially in like the period of like monster alien movies that they're kind of homaging, that was a very standard trick. It was actually pioneered in the movie The Evil Dead, where like essentially it's a way for you to know that the creature or monster is there, and that build that tension and suspense of like, well, you can see your heroes and you know this thing's moving towards it, but you also don't see the creature. So then in a lot of older movies, it was a good way of saving money, but it also helps build tension, and whenever you see the creature, it means that you're not already bored of it by the final fight sequence or final action sequence. But also, even in like Alien 3, the one where they're on the prison planet, they use a lot of that for the alien, like the alien's POV and stuff. So you're right that like it's very different stylistically from everything else in the episode, and if you'd seen more of the show, it's very different from anything stylistically in the show. But I think it goes in with the kind of things that they're homaging and like the things they're trying to play with. But I get why that might not sync up, or it might not feel organic to what we're watching, because again, nothing else in the episode feels like that. I don't have a problem with it, but that's because I'm very well versed with all those things. So when I see it, instead of me making a disconnect, being like, well, that's weird, it's more like, oh, they're doing that thing from the thing. They're doing the Evil Dead shot, or the Alien 3 shot, or even like Francis Ford Coppola, Dracula. Yeah, Francis Ford Coppola ripped off that for his Dracula movie. It's weird. But anyway, yeah, it's a very prominent shot from like classical horror and sci-fi movies. So yeah, it's still a valid thing to like cause a disconnect if you're not familiar with the visual vocabulary of it. But at the same time, it's also very much ingrained in what they're trying to do in the episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, but no, that's a good one. So, as for me, as I've said, like, I really love this episode. I just spent this whole video sucking its dick and everything, but I have to pick something. And a lot of these episodes, it's really hard for me to pick something that I don't like, because they're so good. Like, the episodes are so good that most of the time I'm nitpicking, and here I'm definitely nitpicking, because this is something that no matter who I've talked to about this episode, no one ever notices, but I notice, and it bugs the shit out of me for the brief amount of time that it's on screen. When the creature bites Ein, like, on all the humans, they get, like, a big purple welt, which makes sense, because that's what happens, like, when you're infected or bit by something with poison, you know? But on Ein gets that same spot, and even the fur is, like, there's no compensation for where the fur would be. It's just the same, and I get why they did it. It's a shorthand to understand that, yes, for sure, the dog's not dead, it was bit, and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't actually make logical sense, even in the universe that they've set up. So that is my one nitpick for this episode. And I do have to say that, like, if that's the only thing I can find that I really don't like, then they did a fucking good job, you know? But I have to pick something, so that's what it is. What the fuck's up with that? Like, Ein's got fur. Like, corgis have thick fur, too. Like, and, like, but it's just a big purple welt. It's almost as if, like, when the thing bit it, like, sucked all the hair off of it. Like, you remember we watched that movie From Beyond, where, like, the big worm thing sucked all the hair. That's right. You don't like water coming downstairs or something like that from that video. Go check that one out. I'm going to put the link to it in the description below this one. But anyway, that is the only thing I can think of that I don't like in this episode. So I'm just going to go with that, and we're going to move the fuck on.
That's it. Come on.
Right on, children of the screen. So we went through our favorites, we went through our least favorites, but the real question is, Taylor, again, you've never seen an episode of Cowboy Bebop before. This episode really doesn't give you any idea of what the show's about, but based on your experience with this one episode, would you recommend it to other people?
Hell yes.
Fuck yeah. And you guys know what I'm gonna say anyway. Like, this is like episode 11, and it'd be really weird of me being the guy who's forcing all these people to watch the show, all of a sudden being like, oh no, I don't actually recommend this one, fuck it. But no, definitely recommend it. Yeah, Cowboy Bebop is an awesome show, and I've said that so many times that if I continue elaborating, I'm just gonna be doing a whole cyclical thing where I've already said stuff. You already watched the previous episodes of this thing, and if you hadn't, go back and do that. We'd really appreciate it. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining us for another edition of Carry That Weight, the Cowboy Bebop Retrospective. I hope you all have a good one.
Bye!
Right on, guys. Nerd Scum, out.
Allez, à bientôt. See you next time.
The real fabulous 本当の悲しみが知りたいだけ泥の